This lacks elementary elements of justice, and certainly it lacks that spirit of collegiality and walking together.
Do you have any insight? Is there any secret place you look as a canon lawyer in the back end to find out why the Vatican does what it does, especially in this case?
Well, removal from office is an official act. It's an act of ecclesiastical governance by the supreme legislator, who is the Pope. So you can only analyze his official acts on the basis of what he tells us, what they consist of. Are any canons cited, any ecclesiastical crimes committed? Is there some provision being made because of extraordinary circumstances? None of that has been told to us, because the announcement of his removal or his being lifted or relieved of duty, taken out of his diocese, simply stated the fact that he was no longer the Bishop of Tyler, Texas. It didn't give us a reason. This is basically an offense against the canonical order, because the canonical order is not arbitrary. It's based upon implementing through a legal system the precepts of the gospel and the natural law. And of course, there should be fair procedure given when someone is suspected of having done something wrong. We've seen none of that. What do we know? We know that Bishop Strickland had an apostolic visitation in his diocese. Two bishops, Bishops Cacanis and Sullivan, were there for, I don't know, was it 4 or 5 days, whatever it was. And as a result of that visitation, a report was given to Rome, and Cardinal DiNardo has given a comment about it. Now, he's the metropolitan of that part of Texas. So he said when Bishop Strickland's removal was announced that his continuing as bishop was no longer feasible. My question is, feasible according to whom and for what reasons? And Cardinal DiNardo, by the way, is not the one who did the removal. He's simply commenting on what the Pope has done. So really what we know is that Bishop Strickland, according to the reports, was called to Washington, met the nuncio, refused to resign, and then 2 days later was removed from his diocese. This lacks elementary elements of justice, and certainly it lacks that spirit of collegiality and walking together. Why, if Bishop Strickland is such a problem, why didn't the Pope call him to Rome and have a conversation with him to discuss what's happening in the diocese? If the Pope has concerns about what he's saying, then hear him out, and find out exactly what it is. And then also the Pope should give Bishop Strickland a chance to express to him why he's upset about certain things. Isn't dialogue a two-way street? There's no dialogue present in this process, as far as I can tell, because Bishop Strickland has basically had things being done to him for whatever reason. First of all, is this an administrative removal? In canon law, there's an administrative process for removing or transferring pastors, meaning priests who are in charge of a parish. This doesn't apply to bishops. It's not stated in canon law that procedure can be used. And what an administrative removal means is this is not because of anything wrong that has been done by the pastor. It's simply the bishop's decision that for whatever reason the parish would be better served if he were no longer the pastor, or that there's a parish which has greater need for the gifts and skills of that pastor, therefore he's going to be transferred. So that is it's not a punishment. It's simply that the bishop has the authority in canon law to move a priest from a parish to another. That doesn't apply to bishops. And then what about no appeal? Well, there's no, in canon law, there's no appeal from an act of the Roman pontiff, meaning something that he has done or specifically approved of being done by one of his subordinates. So in this case, there's no appeal because this is a direct papal removal. And there is, though, something called seeking grace and favor of the Pope, where you make a personal appeal, not on the basis of a right to appeal, but simply asking the Pope, would you reconsider your decision? And that's up to Bishop Strickland if he'd like to do that.
Can he say mass? Can he hear confessions? Does he have to ask permission to do these things? What is his canonical status at this point?
Well, it's not exactly clear. He's not retired because his retirement, he never requested to retire, and he wasn't accepted. A retirement request, therefore, was never granted. He's been taken out or removed from the office of Bishop of Tyler. He remains a bishop with no canonical penalties. There's no restrictions on his activities, according to what we know, because that would have been stated in the Roman announcement that he was no longer the bishop. Ordinarily, a retired bishop becomes the bishop emeritus of a diocese, but Bishop Strickland it didn't state that he's retired. Therefore, we don't know if he's the bishop emeritus. If you lose your see, but you're still an active bishop, then you're given either a titular see, meaning that you're become the bishop of a diocese that's been suppressed in Africa. For instance, this has to do with the canonical understanding of theology. The episcopate does not exist apart from the exercise of pastoral care for part of the flock. In other words, we don't have free-floating bishops. Every bishop has a care for a part of the flock of the church. That's why a cardinal or a bishop is Bishop of New York, versus Boston, Washington. We just don't say he's a cardinal and he happens to be in Washington today. Tomorrow he could rule in Boston. No, you're attached to a diocese. And then when you retire, you become the bishop emeritus, which is a new figure in canon law that didn't exist in the past.
Oh, wow.
So what is his canonical status? Basically, it's a little bit confused, but the important thing for listeners to know, he has done nothing wrong in the eyes of the Roman authorities because he's not being punished with a canonical penalty. Therefore, he can say mass any church, he can hear confessions, perform weddings, he can do all the things that a normal priest could do. There is obviously a reason why Rome removed him, which they haven't told us, but that didn't result in him losing his status as a bishop in good standing.
Do you think we will hear from Rome at some point what that reason is? Do you think they will make that clear?
Your guess is as good as mine, because they had the opportunity to do it. This didn't happen overnight. They were thinking about this for quite a while. Certainly the Pope gives interviews on airplane trips, so perhaps a reporter will ask why you did this, what are the reasons, and why they weren't stated at the time. You know, an aspect of this is the people in Tyler, Texas are left perplexed and saying, what did our spiritual father do that he has been not only removed from our diocese, but is free-floating? He's been given no new diocese. They need to know because, you know, if Rome made an estimation and a judgment, meaning the Pope and his associates, that he shouldn't continue in that diocese, well, he has a right to know that, and so do the people, because they could offer contrary evidence and say, wait a minute, you misunderstood it. This bishop is doing a good job, and we're sad that he's gone.
Let me just ask you about the historicity of this. It seems like it's the new trend is to get rid of bishops that you don't like for some reason, and you find reasons. Maybe it's they didn't handle their finances in the diocese very well, or maybe they've had some issues with some of the priests. They didn't handle those priests very well. I mean, not every case is equal. The circumstances are different, certainly in all the cases, but it does seem like a trend. Gonswein is one, an example of that. Cardinal Mueller is one. Cardinal Burke is another. There's the bishop in, Puerto Rico, I think, that got relieved of his position just recently for who knows what. And Bishop Strickland just seems to be the latest one in that troubling trend. What would you say to that? Is there a history here? Does this go back to ancient times, or is this fairly recent?
No, there have been, throughout history, bishops have been removed from their diocese. They've been deposed. Deposition of bishops is an ancient practice because there have been problems. But in our era, since we have the Code of Canon Law, which first came out in 1917, there are standards of justice which are publicly stated, publicly known, that need to be followed. And, there's both a procedural issue here. I don't think Bishop Strickland, based on what I know, was given a fair hearing or had an opportunity to defend his name. But on the other issue that you mentioned, what about all these other people who have been either not renewed in their jobs in the Roman Curia, have been removed, or as in the Bishop Daniel Fernandez Torres in Arecibo, Puerto Rico, he was the same thing. He got a notice that he was been lifted, taken out of the diocese, and it was never stated in the announcement what was the reason, and he was given no new assignment. Archbishop Genschwein, who was the prefect or head of the papal household, was removed from that position and not given another assignment, and was told by Pope Francis that he could no longer live in Rome. So he had to move back to his home diocese, where he has no office. He's not an auxiliary bishop. He has no diocese of his own. It is troubling because essentially people who are defending the innovations that Pope Francis and his associates are engaging in the church, they're the ones who were stepped on. Whereas, let's take Cardinal Hollerich of Luxembourg. He stated in an interview that the Catholic Church's teaching on homosexuality is wrong because of advances in science. That's an absurd statement coming from a Catholic bishop. Bishop Johann Boni of Antwerp in September said that euthanasia is acceptable in some cases. Euthanasia, it means mercy killing. So killing innocent people because they're older, they're sick, is now a moral act. Wow. I can't imagine how a bishop can say that. It's absolutely disgraceful. But it's a sign of how rebellion in the church has become bold, because if he doesn't believe Catholic teaching about mercy killing, then he needs to resign as bishop, because he's a fraud continuing to operate as a Catholic bishop. He is not a believer in Catholic teaching on this matter, yet he claims to be the leader of the flock in his diocese as a Catholic bishop who is known and expected to affirm Catholic teaching. So this is how revolutions that are kind of like soft revolution, they roll in. They're not a huge battle that happens in a day and everybody finds out there's a new order of things. No, now he says things, they don't get corrected by Rome, and then people say, well, I guess that's the new attitude here. So, part of, the act of contrition says, what I've done and what I've failed to do. And what's happening now in Rome is people like Cardinal Muller, who was fired after 5 years at the prefect of the Congregation of Doctrine of the Faith. He was told, well, that was, every 5 years, that's it. You can only do 5 years. Meanwhile, a bunch of other cardinals are still there way after 5 years. Cardinal Burke was the patron of the Order of Malta. He was put aside. And another cardinal, Becciu, at the time, was named a special representative. Let's say this, the Pope is obviously, through his actions and what he fails to do, is indicating what he will tolerate. And all I could say is, Holy Father, if we disagree with you on that, at least give us the space to tell you that.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.